County. Incredibly excited to be here and proud to join you all today. Welcome to our State of Black Los Angeles County Report listening session. We are super grateful to partner with so many incredible folk, and I'm going to talk to you about who they are tonight, and they're also going to take a moment to introduce themselves as well. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and open up today's listening session with a land acknowledgement. Next slide. You know, we do land acknowledgements. I had the pleasure of going to Whitney Museum in Louisiana. For those of you who may not be familiar with Whitney, it is a museum that captures the history of enslaved peoples in our country. And you can actually go there. You can see slave quarters. You can see places where people not only were enslaved, but you can see specifically where you see all the names of formerly enslaved people and who was sold and where they were sold to. And it was a powerful experience to be in that space. On my way back from that experience where we were talking about how we deal with hate and violence directed towards people, I had the pleasure of watching a film on Native American Indian history. And it really opened up my eyes in terms of thinking about the role that land has played in the history and the culture of the indigenous peoples of these lands, especially in the Black Hills with the Lakota, the Sioux, the Dakota, the Choctaw, a whole host of folk in our society whom often we think are not here. Even here in Los Angeles County, we don't necessarily recognize that LA County is one of the largest sort of urban centers for Native American Indians in the country. And there's a reason for that. So in the County of Los Angeles, we recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. And this acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands, and we are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Quiche Nation, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and the San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. And if we can begin to acknowledge that relationship to our history and to this land and our relationship to the truth, it'll make so many more of our lives that much better, right? Next slide. So on behalf of LA County, I want to thank our incredible partners at the YWCA of San Gabriel Valley. Give it up to them, please. I want to thank the incredible hosts we have here. Is it Alkebulan? Did I say it right? Say it again. Alkebulan. Thank you so much. I want to thank you all so much for hosting us in this beautiful, beautiful space. Katina Keys from Miss Sugar Sweets, who is our caterer tonight, and Gustafa Production for doing incredible video work. So I just want to, again, thank our partners, because without you, this type of work would not be possible. I also want to just briefly go over the agenda, but we're going to turn it over for welcome remarks from Deborah Ward, who's the CEO of the YWCA in San Gabriel Valley. But we're just briefly going to talk about what we're going to cover tonight. Let's go to the next slide. So again, we're going to open up with welcome remarks. We're going to get into an overview of the State of Black Los Angeles County Report, and we're going to have a Q&A, community dialogue, and have opportunity to literally listen and learn from all of you today, and be able to hear back so that we can inform our upcoming second annual State of Black LA Report. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Deborah Ward.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and it's just a pleasure to have a full room that is here for this really imperative report. This report came out last year, and I just want to thank Dr. Scarza for his work. He's the first executive director of a department that was created under former supervisor Mark Whitley Thomas to deal with this issue. And from my perspective as CEO of the YWCA, I think it's imperative that this information get to the entire region. And being a leader here in San Gabriel Valley, I wanted to make sure that the report in a listening session was held where all of San Gabriel Valley region could hear the report and have a call of action. How can we give greater credence and strength to the work that is being done? It's only as strong as the people that hear the report and demand action. And so this is to hopefully seed, listen, and be able to develop an action plan where we can improve our communities throughout the region. Many of us know that many Blacks have been pushed out of the major Los Angeles metropolitan area, and there's just so much, and they have gone throughout San Gabriel Valley, both in the 5th district and the 1st district. And we're in small numbers, and the visibility continues to get blurry as we spread out throughout the region. This is an opportunity for us to come together and shine a light on the findings of this report, and more importantly, what are the possible solutions? And the solutions have to come from the people in a collective way. So with that, I welcome you all. And just quickly, if you don't mind, I know we don't want to take a lot of time because we want to hear from you. I think Audra Allison is here on behalf of Diane Lewis, who's the executive director who wasn't able to be here tonight. And if she can just say a few words about this historical center and this community.
Thank you. I just want to welcome you to a Kevlon Culture Center on behalf of Diane Lewis, who is not able to attend tonight. This is a wonderful occasion that the community is coming together and utilizing this facility here. I'd like to invite you to come back to a Kevlon Center. We have 2 upcoming events. On March 2nd, we'll be having an African fashion show here at 3 p.m. And then we'll have March 8th, we'll have the City Art Night. Everyone's familiar with Art Night? All the museums in Pasadena will be open. We'll be doing a salute to hip hop, having a DJ, cabaret dancers, DJ here at the event, here at the center. Briefly, I just want to put in a plug for my activity. I'm the genealogy teacher here, and some of you did come on Sunday. We had an event called Because of Them, I Am, and we had a salute to the Black pioneers of Pasadena. Some of you may know some of these names, the Princes, the Wilfongs, the Cunninghams. And out of this event, we prepared family trees, but we're going to prepare a book that we're going to launch on Juneteenth. So if anybody would like to share their family tree, share their family history with us, please contact the center so we can do that. Again, welcome to the center. Please come back. And thank you, Deborah, for bringing this opportunity to the city of Pasadena.
Just what an incredible just welcome. I just want to be, extend our gratitude for being great partners with us. Also want to acknowledge the leadership of our Board of Supervisors who made this possible, both Supervisors Barger and Supervisor Solis, along with Supervisors Mitchell, Horvath, and Hahn, who have all really deeply invested in the work that's taking place here in LA County. Across the country, we're going to talk a little bit about this today, but across the country, we may have seen, even recently, like in Alabama, I was reading an article this morning about Alabama shutting down a lot of its diversity, equity, inclusion efforts across the country. University of Texas, there's like 30 states that have introduced anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in their legislatures, shutting down opportunities, shutting down cultural centers for their students on campuses. I mean, there's truly a regression that's taking place right now in our country. And that regression, I think, is showing up in a number of ways. But our Board of Supervisors have said, nah, not here in LA County, right? In LA County, we're going to make sure that we care for all people, that we actually get to a place where we can have a society where people are able to experience justice, live healthy lives, and thrive. Let's go to the next slide. We all heard about what happened in the summer, in May of 2020 after the death of George Floyd. There was a summer of unrest. There were so many things that were happening. I remember I was leading a nonprofit organization in Inglewood, which is where I'm from, born and raised. And I had a number of young folk that just came together. I had about 100 young folk who were just so upset. And we got together and we had to sort of have dialogue and figure out, how we're going to respond as a community. And, not only for our youth in the community and on the ground and families, we all sort of felt this collective need to do something about really the virus that is race and racism in our society. And LA County did the same thing. LA County said, in the July 2020, that they wanted to launch an initiative to help root out structural racism within the county. Next slide. That initiative formed the Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative. And I often tell people, we're not a DEI organization. We are a policy shop. We're an organization that's here to change policies. And the way we think about this is, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, but the way we think about this is institutions in our society, both public and private, make decisions that affect our lives. They affect our life outcomes, right? If, for example, I don't know, pick a grocery store, maybe Trader Joe's, decides that they don't want to put a grocery store in a community where the median income is below $60,000, that is a corporate decision that can prevent access to healthy fruits and veggies for communities. If LA County decides, hey, we want to put a mental health service center in this neighborhood, but not in that neighborhood, that can provide access to certain communities and maybe not access to other communities. All of these decisions that institutions make shape outcomes in people's lives. And so the board said, we need to have an anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion initiative, a board-led effort that helps to guide the county's policy agenda so that we can commit to fighting, so we can increase our ongoing commitment to fighting racism, bias, homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and the like in all of its dimensions. And so ARDI was formed at that time. Next slide. So what do we do, or what did the board do? The board declared that racism was a matter of public health, and they said we have to evaluate our existing policies, practices, operations, and programs through a lens of racial equity. That they wanted to make sure that employees, especially African-American employees who had felt like they were denied opportunities from advancing in the county, but not just African-American employees, all employees for that matter, would have an opportunity to promote and grow in their careers in the county. Now, the county has more than 100,000 employees. It's one of the largest employers in the region. And so providing economic opportunity into a stable full-time job that pays a pretty good wage and has great benefits is a phenomenal way to provide for sustainable and healthy lives here in LA County. But one of the other things that I want to highlight is that initial sort of directive from the board, or that initial motion or ordinance or legislation from the board, called for the development of an annual State of Black Los Angeles County report, and that's why we're here today. Next slide. In building out ARDI, we set forth this vision, which is to ensure that LA County is a place where all residents are healthy, experience justice, and thrive. And we do that by working with our departments to utilize data, to examine their outcomes, to determine how their policies are structured, to strengthen the distribution of their resources so that those resources are balanced out to meet the needs of people throughout the county. Next slide. And we do it because we want to support positive life trajectories and prevent negative outcomes. I mean, it's really that simple. It doesn't matter what your race, what your ethnicity might be, what your age might be, or your ability status might be, from the womb to the tomb. We want to make sure that folk in our communities are able to live healthy and thriving lives. Next slide. So, in carrying out what the board has directed us to do, we launched this effort to build out this State of Black Los Angeles County report. And this report calls for a few things. Next slide. The first one is to look at the data. So figure out, what does the data say? And how is that data telling us what's actually happening in our communities and what's actually contributing to the outcomes that we see? So examining the root causes. So if, for example, we see that there are higher rates of diet-related diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, et cetera, then let's figure out what's actually contributing to those outcomes that we see in our communities, and let's uncover those root causes and do something about it. So we're not only presenting the data and tracking the data, but we're going to track those outcomes every single year, year over year, so that we can provide recommendations. Now, when we first presented on this report, the board said to me, I was sitting at a board meeting and presenting on the iteration, our plan for the report, and they said, be bold. They said, be bold. Go out and figure out what LA County can do to help transform the lives of all of our residents, especially African Americans here in the region. Next slide. The first version of the report had 4 research teams, over 1,800 participants, 54 community listening sessions, 50 community organizations, 12 subject matter experts. These were academicians, these were community leaders, and others. We looked at 286, think about them as like neighborhoods or, locations where people lived, where we tried to understand sort of what was happening in that area of interest. Bless you. We had 38 major data points and 4,500 hours of research and writing. It's a lot of work, y'all. I'm just telling you, okay? And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. Tolu Wurola. Go ahead and raise your hand, Tolu. Dr. Wurola was our research lead. She helped to bring those folk together, and she's the one who did a significant portion of that writing along with our partners at the Cal State University Dominguez Hills, Drs. Anthony Samad and Donna Nichols. Also did an incredible partnership with our Claremont Graduate Institute Capacity to Impact partners, Dr. Nazanin Zargarpour and her team. We did tons of interviews, tons of listening sessions, and then we partnered as well with our friends in the internal services department. There's actually a department in LA County that is like the customer service department for all county departments. It's a central serving department. And they brought out their geospatial information systems team, their mapping team, who we worked with to build out maps that you're actually going to see in this report. Next slide. Now, if you've not had a chance to check it out, go ahead and take out your phones right now. Pull up the QR code. I know you have physical copies. By the way, you all are like super special. I'm just letting you know. We didn't print these copies for anybody else, okay? Nobody else got a copy. Actually on the launch, we did like a small companion piece, but this is the big real deal, right? So you have a copy of it right now. If you don't, that's fine. It's okay, because the full report was always meant to be digital. It's a living document. It lives on a website. What's really great about this report is that it has a few domains, so like physical and mental health, housing and homelessness, income, employment, education, and the like. But you can actually like scroll through it. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about what's in this report. Next slide. Yes. There you go. So it's on the agenda. So check it out, y'all. Like, look at it. Scroll through it. I'm telling you, you're going to really enjoy it. So here's what's cool about this report. 6 in-depth chapters. We got bar charts. Okay, that's fun. Infographics, we're used to those. But we also included some interactive dashboards where you can plug in your own address and see what's going on in your neighborhood. Okay? So that'll enable you to figure out by sort of race, ethnicity, gender, like, yo, what's happening in my community right now, and what does the data look like? What's the Black population look like? What is the Latino population? The good thing about this report is that we compare groups to groups within LA County. So even though it's a State of Black LA County report, you can see what's happening with our Asian American population, with our white population, with our Latino, Latinx population. And there are key geographical areas that we're able to highlight. So we're looking at Compton and Carson and Baldwin Hills and Inglewood and Ladera and Pasadena, right? Like all of these, and the Antelope Valley and Long Beach. So from all of these regions, you can actually see sort of what the data looks like in those areas. And then here's a really cool part too that I want to invite you all to submit your location. Like today, this center should be on this report. This should be on the map of our report. We created a specific element in this report where you can submit locations of interest so we can archive them and commit them to our civic memory so that people can learn about places like today, like here, and all these other locations around LA County. In fact, I just got a call from one of the city leaders over at the city of Santa Monica who had a family approach them and say, we want our land back. their land that was stolen from them as well, similar to what happened in Manhattan Beach. We're the team, by the way, that did Bruce's Beach, right? So we got Bruce's Beach done. With our board's leadership and partnership with County Council, we helped to return that land. And if y'all want to know why they sold it back, I'll tell you a little bit later. Don't be mad at us. Don't be mad at us, all right? I'm just telling you. Sovereignty, personal will, personal choice. I dig it. Next slide. We did it across 6 domains: physical health, mental health, housing and homelessness, safety and justice, education, income and employment. Next slide. With these 30, I think I said 6 or 38 indicators. In each of these categories, you will be able to look at sort of what's the data, what do the outcomes look like based upon, issues like life expectancy or, people who receive counseling or rent burden households or college degree attainment or, incarceration or use of force and traffic stops. That data is in there. Next slide. Now, I talked to you earlier about institutions and how they make decisions, right? When we are thinking about what we were thinking about in doing this report was how this report can be used as a tool to address structural racism. When you hear about racism, it's not just about the individual attitudes that people have. That's important. I would actually call that prejudice. Racism is about a relationship of power. It's about people who are in positions of power that can use that power to make decisions to affect your ability to be self-determined. It is pervasive. It inflicts damage upon your ability to be self-determined. Racism is not just about me not liking you on the basis of your race. It's about how I use my power to harm you on the basis of your race. And that is really important when you understand the relationship between someone having power to make decisions that affect your life and then someone who actually leads an entire organization or government agency or institution or corporation that can affect not only your life, but so many other people's lives. Somebody made a decision to put a road here in Pasadena on this street. And somebody made a decision to not build roads in the Antelope Valley where people don't even have sidewalks. You would actually think, like in LA County, right, we're used to living, we live in a concrete jungle. Actually, no. There are a lot of folk that don't have access to sidewalks, which makes it very difficult to get to the grocery store. So when you think about who made these decisions, how decisions were made historically, even urban planning and zoning policies were done to facilitate segregation, which is one of the reasons why here in LA County, we have one of the most diverse populations with speaking over 200 languages in this region, and yet we are one of the most segregated communities and regions in the country. Land use, zoning policies, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, all of that has had negative outcomes on people's health, housing, income, education, and safety and justice and environment and the like. So you can pick it and fill it out, and we can go all the way back, and I can give you tons of examples. I'll give you one right now. All right, so in the 1970s, when the federal government was sort of it was actually starting earlier in like the 60s, and you have folk in New York who were organizing from Bed-Stuy to make sure that Black folk can actually access benefits to help them recover that were created from the 1935 Social Security Act. I think it was 1935. I always do that with the Federal Housing Administration. But back when the Social Security Act was passed after the Great Depression and around that time, it only applied to white women. And it was only done to help maintain the marriageability and redeemability of white women in our society. And it wasn't really until the 60s or 70s that you began to see that open up to women of color, specifically African-American women, and then also eventually to men, because, we had the Civil Rights Act that was passed. And so denying opportunities to people was no longer what you could do in the law of the land, even though it was still being done. In the 70s, when they were creating these policies that actually led to the development of our child welfare systems, eventually that's the development of our child support systems and the like, they literally said, and you can quote me, you can do whatever you want to do, but you can look it up in Columbia's Journal of Race and Law. They said, the Southern Democrats, the Dixiecrats at the time, said, we do not want to provide benefits to Black women because we need them to pick cotton during the cotton picking season. This was in the 1970s. So they denied access, and they also said, we don't want to give it to them because they're ex-slaves, Negro baby-loving Jezebels who don't deserve to have our support because they just love having kids. This was in the congressional policy debate. So when you look at how welfare policies are structured today, you can actually trace it back to language and words that were used when these policies and institutions were being constructed and laws were being passed. That's how structural racism is embedded in our society, and it's so pervasive, we don't even see it. We don't even know it's there. Next slide. All right. Now, here's some cool things, and I'm going to get through this because we have a couple of things that I want to share with you. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of what we're here to discuss. First of all, there are a number of key findings. I'm going to point those out to you right now. First, one of the things that we found is that African Americans have one of the shortest life expectancies in LA County, 6 years less than the county average and up to 11 to 13 years less than most of our counterparts. One of the lowest COVID vaccination rates, and for a number of reasons. Also, second most likely to be at risk for major depression or to be currently depressed. The most likely to be rent and burdened. Rent and burden means that you're spending more than 30% of your income on your housing. Severely rent burden means you're spending more than 50% of your income on your housing. Even though African Americans are roughly 10% or even less than 10% of the county's population, we comprise 30% of the homeless population. Far greater disparities than any other community or group. And homelessness amongst older adults is rising significantly. Homelessness amongst Latinos is also rising significantly as well, and there's a number of reasons why that's happening. Has one of the lowest median incomes in the county and one of the highest unemployment rates compared to white counterparts, and the like. So you can see educational outcomes and safety and justice outcomes, including Black folk being more likely than non-Blacks to be stopped by law enforcement or incarcerated at a county jail. While this data is really sobering, I do want to share some key takeaways. Let's go to the next slide. Ultimately, what our report found is that Black Angelenos are least likely to enjoy good health, housing security, access to economic opportunities, quality education, and freedom from punishment and being overpoliced in our communities than most, if not all, other communities in LA County. However, there are some bright spots. Let's move to the next slide. First, because of the Affordable Care Act, colloquially known as Obamacare, more than 90% of Black people in the county have health insurance. Significant increase. And health insurance gives us access to a whole host of services that we otherwise may not have had. Amongst the respondents who reported that they needed help for mental health or emotional issues, Black people in the county were more likely than any other group to receive mental health treatment, and that's a really important bright spot. Shows signs of healing and recovery as well. And because the county has taken on this approach to be more focused on mitigating the effects of mass incarceration and the war on drugs, we've seen a 16% reduction in the Black county jail population. That is significant, right? That was largely led by people in the community. It was folk in the community who are out advocating, fighting for, and all of these things have had significant benefits to every other population in LA County, to Latinos and especially Latino males. Because of the efforts that are focused on improving conditions for Black folk, we've seen significant improvements in other communities as well. The road to equity and equality in our society is paved through the road of addressing anti-Black racism. Because most of the policies that we've had in our society, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the anti-immigration policies, the anti-LGBTQ policies, were all perfected on Black people first, right? Plessy versus Ferguson. You can go back to Reconstruction. You can figure out segregation, whites only, colors only locations, right? All of these policies, redlining, urban zoning, all of these things are sort of the foundation for all of the other tools that were used to harm just about every other community in our society. So if you want to undo negative impacts on Asian Americans, you want to undo negative impacts on Latino, Latinx populations, you want to undo negative impacts on poor white people in LA County, deal with anti-Black racism. Next slide. So what does that look like in some areas in the San Gabriel Valley? I know this is a little bit hard to see, and apologies, that this is a little bit small, but I think you may have a printout with you as well. For the unincorporated areas of Altadena, Monrovia, Duarte, and Covina, as well as West Covina, which you see has a significant number of Black folk in it, a significant number of people that live in that area, you can see the relative numbers of black populations as well as the percentage of Black people who live